Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And this one is really fascinating. We're going to be talking about Elisa Lam.
Yes, a mystery that continues to fascinate and confuse people.
Yeah, and what's so cool about this one is our source material is going to be Elisa Lam's Spanish Wikipedia page.
You might be surprised by what you find there.
I think so, too. And for those who are already familiar with the case, the basics, Elisa Lam was a Canadian student who disappeared back in 2013 while she was staying at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. And then her body was discovered in the hotel's water tank.
Right.
But today we're going to be uncovering a lot more going beyond just the headlines, starting with who Elisa Lam was as a person.
So we want to understand who she was as a person beyond just the tragic circumstances.
Right.
And the Spanish Wikipedia entry highlights her blog, and that offers us a unique perspective into Elisa's thoughts and her struggles in the time leading up to her trip.
Yeah, and reading through those blog entries is really heartbreaking. She was very open about her battles with mental health, particularly with bipolar disorder. She talked about the anxieties that she had about school and this feeling of loneliness that she felt. It really just paints a picture of a young woman who was struggling with some very difficult things.
It's really important to acknowledge that aspect of her life because if we're going to try to understand what happened to her, we need to know about her mental state.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that we're making assumptions, but we want to have all the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And those blog posts, those words that she wrote, give us valuable insight into what her emotional state was at the time.
For sure. So in January of 2013, Elisa decided to go on a solo trip to Los Angeles. And she chose to stay at the Cecil Hotel. And the Cecil Hotel has a very particular reputation.
It does. It has a long and dark history, deaths, suicides, even ties to some infamous serial killers. It's one of those places with an unsettling feeling about it.
Yeah, it definitely adds to the creepiness factor of this whole case. So Elisa was initially assigned to a shared room, but her roommates ended up complaining about her behavior,
Right.
which led her to be moved to a single room. But what's interesting is that the details surrounding those complaints are very vague.
Right.
And that has led to a lot of speculation.
Yeah, we don't know what they saw. Was it something related to her mental health struggles or something else, something more unsettling?
Right.
We just don't know.
And it brings up a very important question. How much of this is attributed to Elisa's mental state? And how much of this could point to something more sinister?
We have to consider all the possibilities.
Right.
But we have to stay grounded in the facts and the evidence that we do have. Getting caught up in sensationalism doesn't really help us understand what happened to Elisa.
Now, before Elisa disappeared, the last confirmed sighting that we have of her was from a bookstore manager. And he described her as being outgoing and lively. She was buying gifts for her family, and there was no indication that anything was wrong. And then, poof, she disappears.
Right, and it's that suddenness that really adds to the mystery. I mean, if she had been struggling or something, wouldn't there have been signs?
Right.
Instead, she just vanishes without a trace.
Like she stepped into thin air. And that brings us to the infamous elevator footage.
Oh, yes. Released by the LAPD weeks after she disappeared.
Yeah.
This footage is truly unsettling.
It is.
It shows Elisa inside the elevator exhibiting strange and erratic behavior. She's pressing all the buttons, hiding in the corner, peeking out into the hallway, gesturing with her hands like she's talking to somebody, but there's nobody there.
I find it so eerie to watch. It's like watching a silent movie where we don't know the plot.
Right.
And every viewer is left to interpret what they're seeing. Was she having a psychotic episode?
That's what some believe.
Was she trying to hide from someone?
Possibly.
Or was she playing some type of game like some of the theories suggest?
The footage is so ambiguous that it leads to endless interpretations and speculation. Some experts have said that her movements look like she was having a manic episode, while others focus on how strange it is that she appears to be interacting with an empty space.
It's like the elevator itself becomes the stage for this silent drama.
Yeah.
And we, the viewers, are left trying to figure out what it all means.
It's both fascinating and unsettling at the same time.
I agree. And this footage, I think, plays a huge role in why this case is still so captivating to people.
I think so too. It really is, and it just adds to the mystery of her disappearance, but unfortunately the story doesn't end there. Weeks later, there was a horrifying discovery.
Yeah, things took a really dark turn. Guests at the Cecil started complaining about problems with the water, like low water pressure, discolored water, even a weird taste to it. So the hotel staff went to investigate, and that led them to the roof where they found Elisa's body inside one of the water tanks.
Oh, wow. It just adds a whole other layer of horror to this whole thing. People had been using that water completely unaware of what was inside.
It's really disturbing to think about. So the autopsy ruled Elisa's death as an accidental drowning with bipolar disorder, listed as a contributing factor. But even with that conclusion, it felt like there were more questions than answers.
I agree. And this is where I think the Spanish Wikipedia entry has some really interesting information. It highlights the theory that Elisa might have stopped taking her medication, which could have led to a psychotic episode.
I don't think I've heard that emphasized as much in other accounts.
It's a pretty important detail.
It is. If she was having a manic episode, could that explain why she was acting so erratically in the elevator footage?
It's definitely a possibility. We know that mania can cause impulsivity and disorientation, even delusions of grandeur, so it's not impossible to think that she might have wandered up to the roof in a state of confusion.
Okay, but even if she did get to the roof, how does she end up inside the water tank? I mean, those things are huge and heavy, and the lids are really hard to close from the inside.
Right, and that's where the theories start to get a bit wild. Some people believe she was a victim of foul play, but there was no evidence of that. And then you have others who, maybe because of the Cecil's history, lean towards paranormal explanations.
I think there's a part of all of us that wants a simple explanation.
Yeah.
But the circumstances surrounding her death are just so strange and confusing. It's like we're trying to put together a puzzle, but some of the pieces are missing.
It is, and that's why I think this case continues to fascinate so many people. Even with the official ruling of accidental drowning, there's still this feeling like we might never fully know what happened that night.
Yeah, it's like this case taps into some of our deepest fears, like the fear of the unknown, the fear of losing control, and maybe even the fear that even in places that seem ordinary, like a hotel, there's this hidden danger lurking beneath the surface.
That fear, combined with the fact that we don't have a clear resolution, makes it a story that stays with you.
It really does, and you can see how Elisa Lam's case has become a part of popular culture. It's in documentaries, TV shows, movies, even music. The 2021 Netflix documentary Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel is a great example of that. It really brought the case back into the spotlight.
And that documentary did a really good job of presenting the facts of the case and acknowledging all those different theories and that lingering mystery around her death. They didn't try to give us definite answers, but they explored the case and its impact in a really compelling way.
Yeah, and it's not just Western media that's picked up on this story. It's become this global phenomenon, especially in Asian countries like Hong Kong, where Elisa's family is from. Her story seems to have resonated with people all over the world.
I think it speaks to those universal themes that we all connect with: the search for truth, the struggle to understand tragedy, and the fear of the unknown. These are themes that anyone can relate to no matter where they're from.
And in a way, the fact that we don't have a clear answer just makes the story even more powerful. It lets us project our own fears and interpretations onto it, and it almost becomes like a modern-day urban legend.
Yeah.
It really is a story that sticks with you. And I think it's important to remember, while we're going through all of this, there's a real person at the heart of this story.
Yeah.
You know, Elisa Lam was a real person with hopes and dreams and struggles.
Absolutely.
And her story is a really powerful reminder that life is fragile.
It is, and it's easy to get lost in all the details and the speculation, but we can't forget that a young woman lost her life. And I think her story should encourage us to be kinder, more compassionate, and more aware of struggles that other people might be going through.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, reading those blog entries and seeing how open she was about her mental health challenges, I think it really highlights how important it is to talk about mental health.
Yeah.
You know, we need to break down the stigma around it and make sure people can get the support they need.
Absolutely. Early intervention and access to mental health resources can make a huge difference in someone's life. And Elisa's story, while tragic, I think can be a way for us to start making positive changes in how we approach mental health as a society.
I think so too. You know, it's interesting thinking back to our main source for this deep dive, Elisa's Spanish Wikipedia entry. It really did offer a unique perspective. I mean, that emphasis on her medication and the possibility that she might have stopped taking it.
Yeah.
And that could have led to a psychotic break. It's not something I really saw emphasized in other sources.
Right, and it just adds another layer of complexity to the whole case. It reminds us that mental health isn't always straightforward. You know, it's a spectrum and it can manifest in many different ways. So it's not about labeling or judging people, but trying to understand the complexities of mental health.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your final thoughts on the Elisa Lam case?
I think we're left with this profound sense of mystery, a feeling that there are some things we just may never fully understand. But I also think it makes us more aware of just how precious life is and how complex the human mind can be, and how important empathy and understanding are.
That's beautifully said. Elisa Lam's story, despite its tragic ending, continues to impact people all over the world, inspiring countless theories, interpretations, and creative works.
Right.
And even though we may never have all the answers, I think the search for truth and understanding is still a worthy endeavor.
I agree. It encourages us to think critically, question what we believe, and be open to different perspectives. Sometimes the journey of searching for answers is even more valuable than actually finding them.
To all of our listeners out there, we want to leave you with this. What do you think happened to Elisa Lam? What stood out to you from all the evidence and the theories? What questions are still on your mind? We encourage you to keep researching this case and come to your own conclusions.
And remember, the search for truth is a never-ending journey.
That's right.
And it's often in that journey that we find the most meaningful insights. So keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep the memory of Elisa Lam alive, not as just a mystery, but as a reminder of how complex and fascinating life can be.
Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking knowledge and keep that curiosity alive. 60HE.